Forza Italia, officially Forza Italia Political Movement, was a centre-right political party in Italy with liberal conservative, Christian democratic, liberal and populist tendencies, as well as a significant social democratic minority. Its leader was Silvio Berlusconi, 4 times Prime Minister of Italy. The party was founded in December 1993 and won its first general election soon afterwards in March 1994. It was the main member of the Pole of Freedoms, Pole of Good Government, Pole for Freedoms and House of Freedoms coalitions, and is considered to have been very different from the other Italian political parties. In November 2008 the National Council of the party, under the chairmanship of Alfredo Biondi, voted to merge Forza Italia into the People of Freedom, Berlusconi's new political vehicle, whose official foundation took place in March 2009. Throughout its existence, the party was characterized by a strong reliance on the personal image and charisma of its leader. It has therefore been called a personality party, or Berlusconi's personal party. And the skillful use of media campaigns, especially via television. The party's organization and ideology depended heavily on its leader. Its appeal to voters was based on Berlusconi's personality more than on its ideology or program. History. Foundation. Forza Italia was formed in 1993 by Silvio Berlusconi, a successful businessman and owner of 4 of the main private television stations in Italy, along with Antonio Martino, Mario Valdocchi, Antonio Tajani, Marcello Delatri, Ser Previti and Giuliano Urbani. Italy was shaken by a series of corruption scandals known as Tangentopoli and a subsequent police investigation, called Mani Pulite. This led to the disappearance of the 5 parties which governed Italy from 1947, DC, PSI, PSDI, PLI and PRI, and to the end of the so-called First Republic. Forza Italia's aim was to attract moderate voters who were disoriented, political orphans and who risked being unrepresented, especially if the Democratic Party of the left had been able to win the next election and enter in government for the first time since 1947. The establishment of Forza Italia was supported in terms of finance, personnel and logistics by Berlusconi's Fininvest Corporation. The area managers of its advertisement branch Populist Italia 80 organized the selection of FI candidates. Its marketing network staffed the opinion research center Diacron that surveyed the market potential of the new party, and the financial intermediaries of Fininvest subsidiary Programma Italia encouraged the launch of Forza Italia clubs. The new party's campaigning was strongly dependent on Fininvest's TV stations and PR resources. This earned Forza Italia labels like virtual, plastic, or business firm party. In her 2001 study of the party, political scientist Emanuela Poli described Forza Italia as a mere diversification of Fininvest in the political market. The case of Forza Italia was unprecedented, as never before had a large political party been launched by a business corporation. Only slowly it transformed into a mass membership organization. It took 4 years until the first party congress was held. To extend its representation in different regions, FI often recruited established politicians of the old parties, mainly DC and PSI, who defected to the new party, bringing their local clientele with them. FI's political program was strongly influenced by the Manifesto in Search of Good Government, authored in late 1993 by Giuliano Urbani, who was then a political science professor at Milan's private Bocconi University and an occasional collaborator of Fininvest. It denounced corruption, dominance of political parties and remnants of communism as Italy's ills, while advocating market economy, the assertion of civil society and more efficient politics as the solutions. A short stint in power. A few months after its creation, Forza Italia came to national power after the 1994 general election as the head of a political coalition called Pole of Freedoms, Pole of Good Government, composed of Lega Nord, National Alliance, Christian Democratic Centre and Union of the Centre. Silvio Berlusconi was sworn in May 1994 as Prime Minister of Italy in a government in which the most important cabinet posts were held by fellow Forza Italia members. Antonio Martino was Foreign Minister, Ser Previti Defence Minister, Alfredo Biondi Justice Minister and Giulio Tremonti Finance Minister. In the 1994 European Parliament election held in June, Forza Italia was placed first nationally, with 30.6% of the vote, electing 27 MEPs. The party did not join an existing group in the European Parliament, instead forming the new group Forza Europa, composed entirely of Forza Italia MEPs. The first Berlusconi-led government had a short life and fell in December, when Lega Nord left the coalition, after disagreements over pension reform and the first avviso di garanzia for Berlusconi, passed by Milan prosecutors. Forza Italia's leader was replaced as Prime Minister by Lamberto Dni, an independent politician who had been the administration's Treasury Minister. No members of Forza Italia joined the new government and the party leader was relegated to opposition. 5 years of opposition equals. In 1996 the Poll for Freedom's coalition led by Forza Italia lost that year's general election and began what Berlusconi called the crossing of the desert, something that could have proved fatal for such a young and unstructured party. Between 1996 and 1998, the party started to strengthen its organization under Claudio Scaglia, a former Christian Democrat who served as national coordinator of Forza Italia from 1996 to 2001. In December 1999, Forza Italia gained full membership in the European People's Party, of which Antonio Tajani, the party leader of Forza Italia in the European Parliament, became a vice president. In the same year, the party scored well in the European Parliament election of 1999. In the Italian regional elections of 2000, the Poll for Freedoms, with the support of Lega Nord, won in 8 out of 15 regions, while 3 members of Forza Italia were re-elected as presidents of the region in Piedmont, Lombardy, and Veneto, together with 3 more elected for the first time in Liguria, Apulia and Calabria. The party regained power in the general election of 2001, gaining 29.4% of the votes with Giorgio La Malfa's tiny Italian Republican Party, in a new coalition called House of Freedoms and composed mainly of the National Alliance, Lega Nord, Christian Democratic Centre and United Christian Democrats. 5 years in government equals. In June 2001, after the huge success in May elections, Silvio Berlusconi was returned head of the Italian government, the longest-serving cabinet in the history of the Italian Republic. Again all key ministerial posts were given to Forza Italia members: Interior, Defense, Finance, Industry and Foreign Affairs. Additionally, National Alliance leader Gianfranco Fini was appointed Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister from 2004 to 2006, while Roberto Castelli, senior figure of Lega Nord, was Justice Minister from 2001 to 2006. In 2004 European elections, Forza Italia was second place nationally, receiving 20.1% of the vote and returning 16 MEPs. In national office, the government's popularity kept declining steadily year after year. Regional elections in April 2005 were a serious blow for the party, which however remained strong in the northern regions, such as Lombardy and Veneto, and somewhere in the south, where Sicily was a stronghold. After this disappointing electoral performance the cabinet was reshuffled, due to the insistence of the Union of Christian and Centre Democrats' leaders, and Berlusconi formed his third cabinet. During his 5 years in office, Berlusconi government passed a series of reforms: a pension system reform, a labour market reform, a judiciary reform and a constitutional reform, the latter rejected by a referendum in June 2006. In foreign policy he shifted the country's position to more closeness to the United States, while in economic policy he was not able to deliver the tax cuts he had openly promised throughout all 2001 electoral campaign. Toward the people of freedom equals. In the 2006 general election the party was present with a slightly different logo, with the words Berlusconi President. It was the only party to use the word President in its logo. In the election for the Chamber of Deputies, FI scored 23.7% and 137 seats, in those for the Senate 24.0%, without counting Trentino Alto Adige, whose seats were contested on first-past-the-post basis and which is a left-wing stronghold, due to its alliance with the autonomist South Tyrolean People's Party. the incumbent Berlusconi-led government narrowly lost to the Union coalition, which returned Romano Prodi as prime minister, relegating Forza Italia and its House of Freedom's allies to opposition. On July 31, 2007, Berlusconi's protégé and possible successor Michela Vittoria Brambilla registered the name and the logo of the Freedom Party, apparently with Berlusconi's backing. On November 18, after Forza Italia claimed to have collected the signatures of more than 7 million Italians against Romano Prodi's second government in order to ask the President of the Republic Giorgio Napolitano to call a fresh election, Berlusconi announced that Forza Italia would have soon merged or transformed into the People of Freedom Party. After the sudden fall of the Prodi II cabinet on January 24, 2008, the breakup of the Union coalition and the subsequent political crisis paving the way towards a new general election, Berlusconi hinted on January 25 that Forza Italia would have probably contested its final election and the new party would have been officially founded after that election. In an atmosphere of reconciliation with Gianfrancofani, Berlusconi also stated that the new party could have seen the participation of other parties. Finally, on February 8, Berlusconi and Fni agreed to form a joint list under the banner of the People of Freedom, allied with Lega Nord. In the 2008 general election, the Poundal won 37.4% and a majority in both chambers, thanks to the alliance with Lega Nord. Soon after the election, Berlusconi formed his fourth government. On November 21, 2008, the National Council of the party, presided over by Alfredo Biondi and attended by Berlusconi himself, officially decided the dissolution of Forza Italia into the People of Freedom, whose official foundation took place on March 27, 2009. Revival. In June 2013, Berlusconi announced the upcoming revival of Forza Italia, and the transformation of the People of Freedom into a centre-right coalition. The modern-day Forza Italia was launched on September 18, 2013, and the Poundal was dissolved into the new party on November 16, 2013. Ideology: Forza Italia was a centre-right party, formed mainly by ex-Christian Democrats, ex-liberals and ex-socialists. The ideology of the party ranged from libertarianism to social democracy, including elements of the Catholic social teaching and the social markets economy. The party was a member of the European People's Party and presented itself as the party of renewal and modernization. The core values of Forza Italia were freedom, and the centrality of the individual. From a comparative perspective, the ideology of Forza Italia has been characterized as liberal conservative, national conservative and liberal. Alessandro Campi has written that the political culture of Forza Italia a curious and, on many respects, untold mixture of liberalism and democratic populism deserves to be described as an anti-ideologic ideology. As a synthesis or fusion of very diverse political families and traditions, kept together by the mobilizing appeal to freedom. Chiara Moroni, who explains Forza Italia's ideology as a mixture of liberal, Christian democratic and social democratic values, wrote that Berlusconi offered to voters liberal values through a populist style, and that Forza Italia has made the liberal political ideal popular among voters, so that it was spread and shared by broad and heterogeneous sectors of the Italian population. In fact, the electoral base of Forza Italia was highly heterogeneous, and the ideological differences among its voters are explained also by its different regional constituencies. While voters from the north tended to support the original libertarian line of the party, voters from the south tended to be more statist. Both its northern strongholds and its southern strongholds were once dominated by the Christian Democracy Party, but, while in the south most leading members of Forza Italia are former Christian Democrats, the party was highly influenced also by liberals in the north. Forza Italia claimed to be a fresh new party, with no ties with the last governments of the so-called First Republic, and at the same time to be the heir of the best political traditions of Italy. Christian Democrat Alcide de Gasperi, Social Democrat Giuseppe Saragat, Liberal Luigi Einaudi and Republican Ugo La Malfa were considered as party icons. The secular creed, that was also the preamble to the party's constitution, described the party in this way. Forza Italia is a liberal party, although not an elitist one, indeed a popular liberal democratic party. It is a Catholic party although not a confessional one. It is a secular party, although not an intolerant and secularist one. It is a national party, although not a centralist one. Forza Italia thus presented itself as a bridge between Catholics and non-Catholics, who have been previously divided in the political system of the First Republic, and the union of three political cultural areas, that of liberal and popular Catholicism, that of secular, liberal and republican humanism and that of liberal socialism. In a speech during a party congress in 1998, Berlusconi himself proclaimed, "Our liberal vision of the state is perfectly in agreement with the Catholic social teaching." The secular creed of the party explains that FI was a party that primarily underlined freedom and the centrality of the individual, which are basic principles of both liberalism and the Catholic social teaching, often connected in party official documents. We believe in freedom, in all its several and vital forms, in the freedom of thought, in the freedom of expression, in religious freedom, of every religion, in the freedom of association. Freedom is not graciously conceded by the state, because it comes before it. It is a natural right, which belongs to us as we are human beings, and it itself rather lays the foundations of the state. We believe that the state should be at the service of citizens, and not citizens at the service of the state. We believe that the state should be the servant of the citizen and not the citizen the servant of the state. The citizen is sovereign. For this, we believe concretely in the individual. We believe in the values of our Christian tradition, in the life values which cannot be renounced, in common good, in freedom of education and learning, in peace, in solidarity, in justice, in tolerance. In 2008 Berlusconi stated that we want a social markets economy. A democracy cannot afford citizens in poor conditions. With our book on welfare we tackle the needs of the weakest families. It is decidedly a left-wing policy. This government, which centrist, liberal, with Catholics and reformists, intends to advance with policies that the left-wing promises by word of mouth. Sandro Bondi, a leading member of the party, wrote, Forza Italia considers liberal classics as Gross, Scherzo, Hayek and Einaudi as reference authors. In particular, it hark back to the social market economy of Ra paragraph PKE, which was conceived in reference to the traditional social teaching of the Church. Forza Italia has imparted a deep cultural innovation, combining the language of the Church tradition with the liberal and reformist thought. The party included also non-Catholic members, but they were a minority, and it was less secular in its policies than Christian Democratic Union of Germany. The party usually gave to its members freedom of conscience on moral issues, as in the case of the referendum on stem cell research, but leading members of the party, including Silvio Berlusconi, Giulio Tremonti and Marcello Pera, spoke in favor of abstention. While Pera campaigned hard for the success of the boycott alongside with most FI members, both Berlusconi and Tremonti explicitly said that abstention was their personal opinion, not the official one of the party. Members, see also List of Forza Italia leading members by political origin. Most members of the party were former Christian Democrats, Giuseppe Pisanu, Roberto Formigoni, Claudio Scajola, Enrico La Loggia, Renato Schifani, Guido Crosetto, Raffaele Fitto, Giuseppe Gargani, Alfredo Antoniozzi, Giorgio Carolo, Giuseppe Castiglione, Francesco Giro, Luigi Grillo, Maurizio Lupi, Mario Mantovani, Mario Moro, Osvaldo Napoli, Antonio Palmieri, Angelo Sanza, Riccardo Venta and Marcello Vinola are only some remarkable examples. Several members were former socialists, as Giulio Tremonti, Franco Frattini, Fabrizio Sigitto, Renato Brunetta, Francesco Musotto, Amelia Sartori, Paolo Gazzanti and Margherita Boniva. Berlusconi himself was a close friend of Bettino Craxi, leader of the PSI, in spite of his own Christian Democratic and liberal background. Many were former liberals, Republicans and Social Democrats, Alfredo Biondi and Rafael Costa, both former PLI leaders, and former PSDI leader Carlo Visni were later MPs for Forza Italia. Also Antonio Martino and Giansalo Gollin were former liberals. Jas Gawronski was a leading Republican, while Marcello Pera has a socialist and radical background. Even some former communists were leading members of the party, such as National Party coordinators Sandro Bondi and Fernando Adornato. Factions. Members of Forza Italia were divided in factions, which were sometimes mutable and formed over the most important political issues, despite previous party allegiances. However, it is possible to distinguish some patterns. The party was divided basically over ethical, economic and institutional issues. Regarding the latter issue, generally speaking, Northern Party members were staunch proposers of political and fiscal federalism, and autonomy for the regions, while those coming from the South were more cold on the issue. Also some former liberals, due to their role of unifiers of Italy in the 19th century, were more centralist. A scheme of the internal factions within Forza Italia could be this: liberals, supporters of free markets, deregulation, economic freedoms, civil rights and, in general, personal responsibility and freedom. This group was basically formed by two wings: classical liberals, former socialists, as Renato Brunetta and Paolo Gazzanti. Others like Stefania Prestigiacomo and Simone Baldelli, and libertarians, as Antonio Martino, Dario Rivolta, Benedetto della Vedova and his liberal reformers. The latter were more staunchly pro-United States than the former and supported the idea of transforming Italy into a federal state. Liberal centrists. They were more moderate than Martino and della Vedova on economic issues, and more socially conservative on ethical issues, although not being totally sided with the Catholic Church. To this broad group belonged people of various origin: former socialists, former Republicans, former liberals, some former liberal Christian Democrats and many others. They were strong in northern Italy and strong supporters of political and fiscal federalism. Christian Democrats. They believed in the social market economy model and were supporters of Catholic stances over ethical issues. Most former members of Christian democracy were identifiable with this tendency, but also ex-communists, such as Sandro Bondi and Fernando Adornato, and an ex-socialist as Gianni Baget Bozzo, a Catholic priest who was in charge of cultural formation, fitted the category, along with former liberals, as Isabella Bertolini. Some were more socially conservative than others and many of them were close to Giulio Tremonti. Indeed, this group and that described before were very close on most political issues, so that the two factions were often undistinguishable. They are probably the most Europeanist wing of the party, along with former socialists, but many of them were also the most Atlanticists within it, as Adornato and Pera. In 2007, Adornato, Pisanu and Formigoni launched a faction named Liberal Popular Union, but the faction soon was disbanded as Adornato left Forza Italia to join UDC. Formigoni had also his own group, Network Italy, mainly composed of Catholics active in Communion and Liberation, to which group both Crosetto and Fitto showed closeness. Social Democrats. The most progressive wing of the party, especially about ethical issues. They were basically former socialists, as Fabrizio Sigitto, Francesco Colucci, Maurizio Sacconi, Margherita Boniva, Giorgio Stracodaneo, Ciro Moroni and Stefania Craxi, or former Social Democrats, as Carlo Visni, Nicola Cosentino and Paolo Russo. They considered themselves the true heirs of Pietro Nenni, Giuseppe Saragat and Bettino Craxi, continued to declare themselves socialists and were sided with Silvio Berlusconi's centre-right because they saw the Italian centre-left as too hegemonized by the Democrats of the left, heir of the Italian Communist Party, which was the harshest rival of the Italian socialists from the 50s to the 90s. Forza Italia's Social Democrats were organized into four sub-factions: We Blue Reformers, Free Foundation, Young Italy and the Circles of Reformist Initiative. Christian Democrats and liberal centrists were undoubtedly the strongest factions within the party, but all four were mainstream for a special issue. For example, liberals and liberal centrists were highly influential over economic policy. Christian Democrats led the party over ethical issues, while Social Democrats had their say in defining the party's policy over labor market reform and, moreover, it is thanks to this group that constitutional reform was at the top of Forza Italia's political agenda. it is difficult to say to what faction Berlusconi was closer. What is sure is that his political record was a synthesis of all the political tendencies within the party. Internal structure: before being merged into the Poundal, Forza Italia had a president, two vice presidents, a presidential committee and a national council. As the president is the leader of the party, a national coordinator was in charge of internal organization and day-to-day political activity, similarly to the Secretary-General in many European parties. Moreover, the party had thematic departments and regional, provincial or metropolitan coordination boards plus many affiliate clubs all over Italy. It has been claimed that Forza Italia had no internal democracy because there was no way of changing the leader of the party from below. Key posts in the party structure were appointed by Berlusconi or by his delegates. Forza Italia's organization was based on the idea of a party of the elected people, giving more importance to the whole electorate than to party's members. Party national-level conventions did not have normally elections to choose the party leadership, and they seemed to be more like events arranged for propaganda purposes. However, Berlusconi was highly popular among his party fellows, and it was unlikely he could have been overthrown if such an election had occurred. Within the party there was a long debate over organization. The original idea was the so-called Light Party, intended to be different from Italian traditional, bureaucratic and self-referential, party machines. This was the line of the early founders of the party, notably Marcello Delatore and Antonio Martino. However, Claudio Scaglia and most former Christian Democrats supported a more capillary-based organization, in order to make participate as much people as possible, and a more collegial, participative and democratic decision-making process. In a 1999 study, political scientists Jonathan Hopkin and Caterina Paolucci likened the organizational model of the party to that of a business firm, describing it as having a lightweight organization with the sole basic function of mobilizing short-term support at election time. Several other authors have adopted this comparison, and have labeled Berlusconi as a political entrepreneur. Given the perceived use of government responsibility to advance Berlusconi's personal and Fininvest's business interests during the period of Forza Italia-led government, the political scientist Patrick McCarthy in 1995 proposed to describe Forza Italia as a clan rather than a reform-minded political party. In 2004, 10 years after the emergence of the party and during its second term in government, Mark Donovan summarized that this still might be an accurate description. He asserted that the party was only coherent and disciplined when it came to questions that strongly concerned Berlusconi, while he allowed great liberties to the diverse factions in other issues that did not concern his personal interests. Distinctive traits: from its birth, Forza Italia used unconventional means for European politics, such as stickering, SMS messaging and mass mailing of propaganda material, including the biography of its leader Berlusconi, An Italian Story. The party was heavily dependent on Berlusconi's image. The party's anthem was sung in karaoke fashion at American-style conventions. There was nominally no internal opposition. The party used TV advertising extensively, although this was slightly restricted following 2000 by a law passed by the centre-left majority of the time. European affiliation: following its first European election in 1994, Forza Italia MEPs formed their own political group in the European Parliament called Forza Europa. In 1995, Forza Europa merged with the European Democratic Alliance to form the Union for Europe group alongside the Rally for the Republic of France and Fianna Fáil of Ireland. Following an abandoned attempt to form a European political party with Rally for the Republic in 1997, on June 10, 1998 Forza Italia was accepted into the group of the European People's Party. In December 1999 Forza Italia was finally granted full membership of the European People's Party. Popular support: the electoral results of Forza Italia in the 10 most populated regions of Italy are shown in the table below. Electoral results: Italian Parliament European Parliament Leadership: President, Silvio Berlusconi, Vice President, Giulio Tremonti, Roberto Formigoni, Spokesperson, Antonio Tajani, Paolo Bonaiuti, Sandro Bondi, Elisabetta Gardini, Daniel Capezun. President of the President's Committee, Claudio Scagiola, Vice President of the President's Committee, Carlo Visni. President of the National Council, Alfredo Biondi, Coordinator, Domenico Menti, Luigi Caligaris, Ser Previti, Claudio Scagiola, Roberto Antonian, Claudio Scagiola, Sandro Bondi, Dennis Verdini, Deputy Coordinator, Giuliano Urbani/Mario Valdocchi, Fabrizio Sigitto, Gianfranco Mixica. Copyright, Renato Brunetta, Giancarlo Belli. Treasurer, Mario Valdocchi, Domenico Lo Giacco, Giovanni Dell'Ulce, Rocco Cmi. Party Leader in the Chamber of Deputies, Raffaele Della Valle, Vittorio Dotti, Giuseppe Pisanu, Lio Vito, Fabrizio Sigitto. Party Leader in the Senate, Enrico La Loggia, Renato Schifani, Gaetano Quagliariello. Party Leader in the European Parliament, Giancarlo Ligebu, Claudio Azzolini, Antonio Tajani. Bibliography, Ruzza, Carlo. Fella, Stefano. Forza Italia. Reinventing the Italian Right, Territorial Politics, Populism and Post-Fascism. Pages 104–140. Hopkin, Jonathan. Forza Italia after 10 years. Italian Politics, Quo Vadis? Pages 83–99. McDonnell, Duncan. Silvio Berlusconi's Personal Parties, From Forza Italia to the Popolo della Libertà. Political Studies 61, 217–233 doi, 10.1111 per Joule 1467–9248.2012.01007x. Pierlucci, Caterina. The Nature of Forza Italia and the Italian Transition. Journal of Southern Europe and the Balkans 8, 163–178 doi, 10.108/14613190600787260. Poli, Emanuela. Forza Italia, Strutture, Leadership e Radicamento Territoriale. Bologna, Il Mulino. Rainiolo, Francesco. Forza Italia, a Leader with a Party. South European Society and Politics 11, 439–455 doi, 10.1080/13608740600856470. Notes. References. External links, Official website, Chart of Values, Key Ideas, Secular Creed of Forza Italia.